Hi folks. Um, Sorry about the last video. My battery died, um, so it just kind of switched off. So um, this is really just to follow on. Obviously, I'm out with the dogs again. Um, it's it's not bad weather today. It's quite well. It's clouding over now, but we've had sun most of the day. But it's not too bad. Uh, Not too bad temperature wise. It's actually okay. Um, so yes, let's continue with the story of my mother, because it's only when I look back over videos that I've done that I can know whether I've left anything out, and I'm sure I've left loads of stuff out. But you know, as I go through my story, it'll all overlap anyway. A lot of it. Um, so so yes, my mother married for the second time, and obviously my eldest brother from her first marriage was kind of made a part of the new family, so to speak. She then had my two sisters and another brother with her second husband, and he, I believe, treated my eldest brother quite well. I mean, I don't know. My that's my brother's story to tell, but um, I believe he was a farmer, um, and obviously he was in the Cotswolds. He had a farm in the Cotswolds. Um, but my mother, she didn't lack for anything. She didn't lack for anything financially. Uh, she used to she used to be quite proud of the fact that she had an account at Harrods and used to dine frequently at the Ritz and wore fur coats, and she never wanted for anything. But I think I think the one thing she did want for was proper love, emotional support. I think was the biggest thing that she obviously needed. So you don't paddle, do you guys? No, you don't. You don't like the water really. You run through it. You don't. You don't really. Not really water babies, are you? So so yeah, she was. So she's in her second marriage, bless her. Um, and again, you see, this is again my grandmother, who, on reflection, I think was probably a pretty evil woman. Um, and as I say, I'll speak later about her. That I've forgiven her, of course I have, but I think, but then you have to look at her parents, don't you? You have to look at what her family upbringing was like, and did she get the emotional support she needed as a child? No, probably not. Which is why that she was like that with my mother and my mother's sisters and brother. So there she is, and I don't believe she was happy. I believe she did the best she could. But my grandmother then introduces her to yet another man, my father, who at the time I believe he was a flight lieutenant in the Royal Air Force. I don't know. I tried to go into his story, and I kind of wasn't in the right place to do it at the time. But I, I have researched a little bit, and I think he was in the RAF reserves. I think he was a war hero anyway. And then he went from flight lieutenant to squadron leader, and he got the DFC, so he was, a war hero and he wasn't just in sort of during the war, he was in afterwards as well, I believe. He didn't leave the RAF, I don't think, until just before I was born. But so my grandmother introduces my mother to my father. So what happens? She has an affair with my father, and she ends up getting pregnant with my brother, the one whose birthday I was born on. And obviously she's still married. So she obviously told her mother, my grandmother. And do you know what they did in those days? Or what my mother was persuaded to do? Was to drink a bottle of gin, mother's ruin as they used to call it, and get rid of the baby. And she then, I mean, it sounds crazy, doesn't it? Apart from being awful, it sounds crazy that, you would drink a bottle of gin and then get a tea tray and slide down the stairs on it to try and dislodge the baby. And I mean, can you imagine? I mean, you can imagine, come on. What she went through. I mean, okay, you can say, well, she shouldn't have had an affair. Well, no, she probably shouldn't have had an affair, should she? But can you blame her, really? But, obviously, my brothers and sisters from her second marriage, obviously they went off to boarding school and did their education, and but they suffered horrendously because of my mother's choices. Anyway, she told me that when when my grandmother told her to do this and to try and get rid of the baby, she didn't really want to do it, and obviously it didn't, it didn't happen because my brother arrived, but she started bleeding very, very heavily one day, and one of my sisters, who wasn't particularly old at the time, she was, I don't know, to be fair, I mean, she could have been between the ages of 5 and 7, I don't know. My mother ordered her to sort of go and get towels, and because she was started bleeding everywhere. So obviously my mother rang my father, and he obviously arrived at the hospital. He was probably drunk when he arrived, but he did arrive at the hospital, and sorry, I'm just being pulled up the beach by Hagen here. But also, so did her second husband arrive at the hospital. And he'd already said to her, look, if you get rid of the baby, then I'll take you back and kind of forgive you, and carry on looking after you, and because my mother had nothing apart from him. So and my mother said to me that she couldn't make the choice. She obviously did make the choice, but she went into the bathroom and with a lighted cigarette, and she just held it to her neck and was just screaming because she couldn't make a decision. She couldn't make a decision either way what to do. But fortunately, my brother survived, and I believe that he was meant to survive. And so apparently my father had turned up at the hospital, had taken her in, she was bleeding, and the two men, another second husband and my father, basically were at the hospital together. And apparently my mother said that her second husband said to my father, "She's all yours, look after her." And basically he went home broken hearted, I can imagine. I have a lot of sympathy for him. Broken hearted. And I think not long after, when my mother arrived back at the house, he'd cleared everything out. All the furniture was gone, and there was just an empty house. And so she was left with the kids, and she'd made a decision to kind of move in with my father. So my brother survived, obviously. And back in those days, you think my brother was born, 5 years before I was. It was it was the done thing then, that whoever you were married to, that would be the name put on the baby's birth certificate as the father. Well, fortunately, that didn't happen. So, but that was kind of just what I wanted to say, before we sort of start getting into my stuff, really. And it is, as I'm doing this, it's bringing up a whole new set of stuff, not bad, because I've faced it all. I truly have. I feel nothing but sadness, really. Sadness that, what I forgot to say was, Mum was actually in the Land Army during the war. So she did do time in the Land Army with her two sisters, of which, I'm quite proud of. But, the effect that all of that would have had on my brothers and sisters, is quite real, and it's quite raw. And I know that even up to this present day, they still suffer with stuff. But that's their story, and if I tried to do their story, one, I wouldn't be doing them any justice, because I didn't live their lives, and two, I respect them too much for that. So I'm not going to say stuff that I don't know personally, or my mother didn't tell me. So everything I'm sharing is, concerning my mother, is stuff that she talked endlessly about. But she, so kind of she made a decision, obviously, to go and be with my father. And then obviously I came along after that. So we'll get into that bit next time. Excuse me. Here she goes. Let's dig the beach up, Scotia. Hey, let's dig the beach up, Scotia, shall we? Well, it's better than putting green, actually, isn't it? So yes, that's but you know what? You see the thing for me is that no matter what, no matter what my mother's past was or mistakes or whatever, um, she was my mum at the end of the day, and I've forgiven her. I've forgiven her. It's as simple as that. There's no, I don't find that one difficult. I did actually saying that I did because children of alcoholics, what they do is they learn to excuse their parents drinking. So for years I made excuses when really underneath I was so angry at her, angry at myself, but more angry at her. And then I suddenly realised one day that actually, how could I forgive her if I couldn't actually put the blame on her first? And then it was actually the right thing for me to be angry with her because, that was, I'm just going to sit on this rock here for a second. I had to be angry with her in order to forgive her. It was no good excusing her and saying, oh, well, yeah. I don't excuse her. I understand why she was the way she was. But in every single conversation that we had, and believe you me, I mean, I saw her weep, floods of tears, genuine floods of tears. Later on, shortly before she died, over what she'd allowed her kids to go through. And she wasn't putting it on. She was genuinely distraught at what she'd allowed her kids to go through. All her kids. She loved all of them. At Christmas she used to have these Christmas decorations, and she had six little plastic angels that we used to stick with sellotape to the fireplace every year. And I remember she used to say, that's my children. And she loved them, and she was terribly sorry. And and I believe that as a Christian we have to forgive. We can't. That's one of the things that Jesus said. If you do not forgive your brother, then your Father in heaven cannot forgive you. And I know so many people who profess to be Christians who say, oh, well, I really can't forgive them. Well, how can you say that you have a relationship with God then, and that you're close to God, and if you can't forgive your brother? That's what it's about, isn't it? Forgiving makes you the bigger person, and believe you me, it sets you free. Once you ask God to bring to mind those people that you need to forgive, then it opens the floodgates of forgiveness. And it's not because they deserve it, it's just because it's for your sake, it's for our sake that you forgive, and it's not, you don't even have to like the person or forgive them. You can hate them for the rest of your life, but you still have to forgive. And so I've done that with Mum. It's the stage I had to go through. But my mum, I mean, anybody who knew her, she spoke just like the Queen. I know you probably laugh at that, but she did. She spoke just like the Queen, and she was brilliant at English. and she used to say she didn't have a musical note in her body, despite the fact that their own mother had gone to the Royal Academy of Music and was a brilliant pianist. She had not a musical note in her body, and she used to laugh because, you know, all of her kids are musical to some degree. Me, right down the bottom of the scale. But no. So there you go. That's kind of where I want to leave it with Mum, and then once I can upload these videos, then this one, then I can, and then I'll give you a bit of info on my dad. So, oh, it's really warm here, isn't it? It's lovely. I know. You'd like to sit on my lap, wouldn't you, Hayde? He says I would. He says, if you get me a nice beach towel. What's your sister doing? She's digging again, isn't she? She's digging in that hole again, she is. What's she like? It's like she digs a trench around us. Is that what she does? Do you think? She digs a trench around us, does she? Right. Oh, here she goes. She just loves the digging. Loves the digging. Love it, don't you? Right. So I'll get home then. Yeah. The sooner you get home, the sooner you're nearer your grab, aren't you? So, yeah, that's a good idea. Right. So, I'll get myself up off this rock and head back down the front way. But yeah, so hopefully the next video will I'll start talking about my dad and give you a bit of history, and so bid you farewell until the next time.